Hayeled with Rav Noam, and of course through the lens of Torah. So this morning we are going to hear a number of shiurim presentations about Yerushalayim from the Makoros, from the sources, so we can continue to grow in the way that we value Yerushalayim and our understanding of Yerushalayim. We are blessed both, I would say institutionally and personally, to welcome Rav Bednarsh, who's going to be our first speaker this morning. Rav Bednarsh is a very accomplished Rosh Yeshiva, a Rav, a Talmud Chacham of note, world famous. He answers Shilas for Rabbanim, and so he has a lot to be proud of. I think one of the things he's very proud of is who his wife is, who is a member of the Sha'alvim family. But if you ask Rav Bednarsh, and if you read his biography that's going to come out in the next 30, 40 years at some point, there's going to be a chapter discussing greatest accomplishments, and I have no doubt that the most prominent accomplishment that he will brag about is that he was my day camp counselor when I was 10 years old. So it's really, really special for me to welcome Rav Bednarsh to share some words of the Torah for us this morning. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes. I take credit for everything. Sure, I take credit for everything Rabbi Turetsky has become, because without that proper day camp experience at 10 years old, who knows where he would have ended up. It is. It's always a special pleasure to be invited to give shiur at Sha'alvim for Women. I wish I could come every day to teach at Sha'alvim for Women. I get a little taste of it, very often on Shabbat when we get to have Sha'alvim girls over, and it's really. I hope you realize what a tremendous privilege it is to be spending a year learning in such a special place with such really, really, really special teachers. Mostly Mrs. Bednarsh, who's very special, but also the other faculty as well. I want to talk a little today about Yerushalayim, and I want to go back to the beginnings of history, or the beginnings of Jewish history. Beginnings of Jewish history will start by going back to the beginnings of the Jewish religion, the Torah. What does the Torah tell us about Yerushalayim? So let's see. We'll look at Makar number 1. Maybe we'll skim through it a little quicker so we can finish on time for our next speaker. The Torah says in Parshas Re'eh, the big chiddush in Parshas Re'eh, those of us who learn Navi, I'm sure we all learn Navi here, know one of the big struggles in Sefer Melachim was what we call the Isser Bamot, right? Makrivim, Maktirim, Babamot. Can you bring karbanos in your private, street minyan, mizbeach in your backyard, or do you have to go to Yerushalayim? If we look in the Chumash, the Parshas Re'eh, the big chiddush of Parshas Re'eh is number 1, Kiyam al hamakom asher yivchar Hashem Elokechem mikol shivtechem l'sum shmo sham, the place Hashem chooses from all your shvatim to rest His presence there, His name, His presence. L'shifno tidrushu v'asa shama, seek out His presence and come there. V'avesim shama l'osechem v'zivchechem yes masro osechem yes trumas yetchem v'nidrechem v'nidrosechem v'choros b'karchem v'tzochem. You'll bring there, and it lists all the different karbanot. V'achaltem sham l'fnei Hashem Elokechem u'smachtem b'chol mashlach yetchem atem v'atechem Hashem rach Hashem Elokech, and you'll eat the karbanot there, and you'll rejoice there in front of Hashem. Lo ta'ason kechol asher anachnu osim po hayom ish kol hayashar be'einav. All right, we'll read this in a certain shot way, even though there's a lot of levels of complexity to this pasuk. Don't do what you do now. Everyone, whatever's yashar be'einav, whatever's straight in his eyes. Don't do everyone whatever you want. Meaning, don't bring karbanos however, whenever, wherever you want. You haven't yet reached the resting place and the inheritance that Hashem has given you. V'avartim sayar, given you cross the Yarden River to get to Israel. V'shavtem ba'aretz, excuse me, asher Hashem Elokechem anchil eschem. You live in the land Hashem gives you, this land. Ve'niach lechem mikol oivechem misaviv v'shavtem betach. Hashem gives you respite from all your enemies around, and you live in peace and security. Sounds like not right away. You need to get a secure state and beat your enemies. Probably we could say that didn't happen until the days of David HaMelech, right? When they finally not only beat the Canaanim and the Plishtim and was no longer a threat. I think it's fair to say that historically, from the time of David HaMelech on, there were no nations, local nations, that were a threat to the Jews anymore. No, the threat was all people very far away. They lived in security, and what are they supposed to do then? Find the place Hashem chooses, and there bring all the karbanos I command you. Listing the karbanos. Rejoice there with everyone. Okay, we're getting the main point here. Be careful, guard yourself, lest you bring karbanos, an ola, anywhere you want. Don't bring a karban wherever you want. Ki im bama, wherever you see. Ki im bama, the place Hashem chooses in one of your shvatim. Sham ta'lo lo secha. There bring your karban ola. Sham ta'aseh kol asher anochi mitzaveka. There do whatever. Bring whatever I command you. Okay, the rest of this parak and the part that's not xeroxed on this Makor sheet continues in the same vein. There's a mitzvah in the Torah. Hashem says again and again and again in Parshas Re'eh that when you go to Eretz Yisrael, there's a place Hashem chooses. You build the Beis Hamikdash there, the Shechina rests there, and that's where you bring karbanos. You come to worship Hashem. You come to eat your Maser Sheni. You come to bring your karbanot. You come to rejoice in the Aliyah L'Regel, etc. Okay. That is, what do we call that city? What's the name of that city? Yerushalayim. That's Yerushalayim. That's the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, right on top of the Kotel. Maybe we'll get to the Kotel later today. I don't know exactly what the plans will be. But right up there on top of the Kotel, that's the Beis Hamikdash, the Makom Asher Yivchar Hashem. Now, what is interesting about what it says in the Chumash? What does it not? It says a lot in the Chumash. What does it not say in the Chumash? Yerushalayim. Right, where does it say you should build the Beis Hamikdash? In the place Hashem chooses. Right? Play, right, and the boys yeshiva call it player to be named later. Right? Or to be announced. Right? In the city to be announced. Right? But it doesn't say, as a matter of fact, which city is never mentioned by name anywhere in the Torah? Yerushalayim. It never says the word Yerushalayim in the Torah. It says in lots of places, Tanakh, obviously. You know, half of Tanakh happened in Yerushalayim. But it never says the word Yerushalayim in the Torah. The closest you get is Malki Tzedek Melech Shalem Hotzi Lechem Vayayin. After the war of Avram against the four kings, Malki Tzedek, the king of Shalem, brought him food and drink. And it seems to be that, it seems clear from other parts in Tanakh that Shalem is a nickname for Yerushalayim. But it was just a place where there was a Goyish king there. It's not a Goyish king, but still, it was a Goyish king, not part of our nation. And it doesn't say any special halachos or hashkafos about Yerushalayim there. Yerushalayim is conspicuously absent from the Torah. So, when did Yerushalayim become the place of the Beis Hamikdash? Let's go to number 2, the history of Yerushalayim. Vayavo, Kol Shivtei. We know that David HaMelech, right? We know a little Navi, not in this sheet. He conquered Yerushalayim. What was the old name of Yerushalayim? What was it called when he conquered it? Yevus, because the Yevusim lived there. And then, number 2, David HaMelech becomes king of the Jews, right? You know, it was not such a pasha journey. Shaul was king of the Jews. Shaul was rejected by Hashem. Shmuel HaNavi anointed David instead. Shaul was not happy about it. He chased him, tried to kill him for many, many, many years. Eventually, Shaul died in battle. And David took over. And let's see what happens. Number 2, Vayavo Kol Shiftei. This is David's moment. Vayavo Kol Shiftei Yisrael David Chevrono. All the Shvatim of Am Yisrael came to David to Hebron. David ruled in Hebron at first. Why would David rule in Hebron at first? Anyone have an educated guess why he would have ruled in Hebron?
Maybe that was like the city of the Avot.
That was maybe the city of the Avot, but why David specifically?
Oh.
Where was David from? What was his family from? What? What Shevet? Yehuda. And where is Hebron? It's a very, very chashuv city, obviously. It's a chashuv city, Ma'arat HaMachpelah, in Shevet Yehuda. So it makes sense. Now again, there are other cities in Yehuda, but it makes sense. It is maybe even one of the biggest cities, or the biggest city, I don't know how big every city was 3,000 years ago. It was a very chashuv city in Shevet Yehuda, so David ruled there. All the Shvatim of Yisrael came to David in Hebron, Vayomer Leimar, Hinenu, Atzmach V'Sarcha Anu. Behold, we are your, in English they flesh and blood. Here we say flesh and bones. We're your flesh and blood. What do they say? We're all one Am Yisrael. We all want one king. Even yesterday and the day before when Shaul was the king. Come on, even when Shaul was the king, who was the real king? You were the one who brought in and out the army. You were the one who led Am Yisrael. And Hashem told you that you will shepherd my nation Am Yisrael, and you will be the king. Nagid is a king of Am Yisrael. What are the all of Am Yisrael? Satan said two times. Number one, we're all flesh and blood. We're all one family. We're all together in this. Of course, you're one of us. And number two, Hashem told you, right? Again, we, the reader, know that Hashem appointed David as king because, we, the reader of the Tanakh, gets to read the scene where Hashem tells Shmuel and Avi to go make David king. In those days, the big issue was, when do you believe it if it happened? Right? I mean, we know what nevuahs happened because we read the novel, as it were. We read the book. How do they know? So somehow they came to believe. They say, we don't doubt. We heard rumors that in private, Hashem sent a Navi to anoint you, and we believe those. It makes sense to us. We trust Shmuel HaNavi. We really accept that there was a nevuah that you be the king. And therefore, Vayavo kol ziknei Yisrael Melech Hebron, all the elders of Israel, the leaders, came to the king in Hebron. Vayichor l'Melech David brit, and David made a covenant with them b'Hebron l'fnei Hashem, in front of Hashem. Vayimshu es David l'Melech Israel. They all anointed David to be king of Israel, even though Shmuel anointed him when he was a kid, as a messenger of a nevuah of Hashem. But to show that they accepted and they were mekabel on themselves, they all anointed him as king. Ben shloshim shana David melech arba'im shana malach. He was 30 and reigned for 40 more years. Okay, b'Hebron malach Yehuda shevet shanim. Before this story happened, he reigned for 7 years only on Shevet Yehuda in Hebron, because the rest of Am Yisrael hadn't yet accepted him. V'shisha chadashim, and 6 months. U'v'Yerushalayim malach shloshim v'shalosh shana al kol Yisrael v'Yehuda. And in Yerushalayim, he reigned 33 years on all of Am Yisrael and Yehuda. Here's the beginning of Yerushalayim. All of a sudden, the Navi tells us something shifted. He reigned in Hebron, and then he moved to Yerushalayim. Why did he move to Yerushalayim? Let's see if there's a clue. David HaMelech and his people went to Yerushalayim to the Yevusi who lived there. Vayomer David Lamor Losav Ohena Ki Masircha Ivrim Rapiskim Lamor David Hema. Okay, difficult pasuk. Maybe they taunted David and said, "Don't come into the city unless you remove the lame and blind guards from the city who are keeping you from coming here." Like, oh, you can't conquer our city. We're a fortress on top of a mountain. Even if we're lame and blind people, that's enough to keep you out of the city. But Vayilko David Tzion Ir David. David conquered the fortress of Tzion, which is Ir David. Vayomer David Yomo Komake Yevusi. Vayigabat Sinor V'Yasav Hiskimis Avrimus So Snuei Nefesh David Al Ken Yomari Ver Pesach Lo Yovel Avayis. Okay, another difficult pasuk with this lame and blind people. But David says whoever kills the Yevusim and gets to the Sinor, gets to the Sinor is a pipe. Right? Apparently, how did David conquer the city, which was unconquerable? He did, right? You can go on a tour. If you get a good tour guide to take you around there, maybe you can find the place where he did this, and you can reenact it yourself. He found like a water channel. Like nowadays, how do they escape from prisons and all the movies, right? They go through the sewer pipes or through the water pipes or something. So he found the water pipe of the city and went through, not the sewage pipe, but the running water, how the water gets into the city, and he went through. Vayesha David and Suda Vayikra Ir David. He dwelt there and called it Ir David. Vayiv David Savim Minimilova Vaisa, and he filled in a little of the mountain to make the mountain bigger. Vayel David Aloch V'Gadol Hashem Lokates Vakotimo. And David got bigger, and Hashem was with him. Basically, what do we see in this story from the Tanakh, from Shmuel Bet? Everyone made David king, and what was apparently the first thing he did when he was anointed king? His first move was to move the official residence, right? To move the palace. To move the capital. He moved his capital from Hebron to Yerushalayim. Does it say why he moved from Hebron to Yerushalayim? It doesn't say why. It just says how he conquered Yerushalayim. He must have had some reason. We're not sure what his reason is, right? Again, it gets very mysterious. The Chumash doesn't say anything about Yerushalayim. David HaMelech lives in Hebron, which is his shevet, and he reigns in Hebron, which, let's assume Hebron was like the state capital of Yehuda, as it were, right? Albany. Trenton, what have you. And then everyone appointed him king. He made it king of Israel, and he moved to Yerushalayim. And it doesn't say why. Where was Yerushalayim? Let's see the next thing he does. Right, number 2 is Perek Hey, and then we'll analyze it. Number 3, Perek Vav. It's basically, like I skipped some details, the next parak. What's the next thing he does? First he moves his palace to Yerushalayim, but we know in Judaism, hopefully we've learned anything about religious Zionism in Eretz Yisrael by now. We know that in Judaism we don't believe that our nationalism and our religion are two separate, opposing, independent things. We believe that being a Jewish nation, having a Jewish state, is part of our avodas Hashem, and that our avodas Hashem is part of what it means to be a Jewish state. So if David moves his governance and his political capital city to Yerushalayim, the next thing is he has to start working on the Beis Hamikdash, the Makom Asher Yivchar Hashem. We know from later on David wanted to build the Beis Hamikdash, and the end Hashem said he has to wait for Shlomo Melech. What's the first thing he did? That was Perek Hey. Here's Perek Vav. Number 3, Vayosef O David Kol Bachur B'Yisrael Shloshim Aleph. He gathered 30,000 choice soldiers, as it were. Vayakam Vayel David Kol Asher Yito, and he went, and all the 30,000 were with him. Mibaalei Yehuda, from the leaders of Yehuda. Lahalos Mishames Aron Elokim Hashem Nekra Shem Hashem Tzvakot Yishem Kru Alav. To bring from you, someplace in Yehuda, someplace in the Beit Shemesh area, he went to bring up the Aron Hashem, the Aron of the Luchos Habris, right, which was the core of the Mishkan, the actual Aron, not what we call an Aron Kodesh, the original Aron Kodesh with the Luchos inside. He went to bring it up, the one that Hashem's name was called on, and he went to bring it up to where David Kol Beis Yisrael Ma'alinas Aron Hashem B'Torah Kol Shafar. David and all the Jewish people are bringing the Aron Hashem up with shouting and shofar blasting. Va'yaron Hashem Ba'ir David. It was coming to Ir David. He brought it up to Yerushalayim. Umichal, unfortunately, Shaul Nishkafa Be'arach Halom Atiras Hamelch David Ufaseiz Umchaker L'fnei Hashem Ativas Lo Beliba. Michal, daughter of Shaul, looked out the window and saw David. He was dancing with all his might in front of the Aron of Hashem, right, like a Simchas Torah kind of thing. And she despised him in her heart, apparently like what she learned from her father's house, which maybe was the reason why her father was not chosen to found the lineage of Malchut Yisrael and was rejected by Hashem, is that the covenant of the king is above everything. And here's David, he's dancing around like a wild teenager in front of the Aron. What happened to the covenant of the Malchut? So she despised him, and David knew, and maybe the reason why we have Malchei Beit David and David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam, that the covenant of the king is super duper important if you want to have a country, but not nearly as important as the covenant of Hashem. And the king should dance and be wild a little in Simchas Torah in front of the Aron to honor the Aron of Hashem. So what happens at the end? Vayaviu es Aron Hashem Yitzigo Toten Komo. They brought the Aron of Hashem and placed it in its place b'tocha ol shenatolo, in the tent which David pitched for it. Vayal David Olol L'fnei Hashem Shlomo, and he brought Karbanot. Basically, David moved his capital to Yerushalayim. He moved the Aron. He built an Ohel like the words we use for the Mishkan in Parashas Shrum and Tetzaveh, etc. He built a little Mishkan for the Ohel then, and then he wanted to build the Beit Hamikdash, but not our topic now. In the end, Hashem told him that he would have to wait one more generation. But we see a very clear agenda of David. First thing he's elected, right? You know, the president say, first thing when I'm elected, this is what I'm going to do. David didn't make campaign promises. Those days was before campaign promises. But first day, right, my first 100, right, I don't know if you remember Barack Obama, he said, my first 100 days, this is what I'm going to do. First 100 days, what's David going to do? I'm going to move the White House to Yerushalayim, and I'm going to move the Mishkan. I'm going to move the center of, I'm going to move the Makkah, find the Makkah Asher Yivchar Hashem Yerushalayim. The big question is, how did David know? What made David decide on Yerushalayim? There's nothing in Sefer Shmuel that tells us why he picked Yerushalayim. Now, we're going to play a little devil's advocate here. Let's assume you were someone alive in the time of David HaMelech, right? It's always hard. What's the hard thing about learning Tanakh? Is that it's sometimes like reading a book when you know the ending already. We know the ending of Tanakh, so sometimes you don't appreciate all the stories there because we know what's going to happen in the end. But we have to realize that people alive at the time of Tanakh only knew what happened to that point. They don't know the ending, right? In Chumash, no one knows what's going to happen later in Chumash. They only know what happened till then. In Navi, they don't know anything about Yerushalayim in the next 3,000 years and the Beis Hamikdash, Rishon and Sheni. All they know is things that happen until their time, and the only books they have are the books that are written until their time. And obviously, if you're a Jew in the time of David HaMelech, the most chashuv book, you have Yeshua Shofta in that history, but obviously the most chashuv book is the Torah, right? I mean, most chashuv book is still the Torah, right? You would try to base all of your beliefs off the Torah. So let's say you're a Jew alive in David HaMelech's time, and all you have is the Torah. You also have Yoshua and Shoftim, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of useful information for our sugya there, right? All you have is the Torah, and you want to know, where is this Makom Asher Yivchar Hashem? Where is this place Hashem will pick? We know Hashem hasn't picked it yet, he's going to, but obviously we have to try to intuit where it should be, and then see if Hashem picks it. If all you had was the Torah, where would you think we should build Beis HaMikdash? Anyone have an idea? Put yourself 3,000 years ago in their shoes. Where would you have built the Beis HaMikdash if all you had is the Torah? Any ideas? Anyone? Maybe Hebron. Why Hebron, obviously? Because what? That's the Ir HaAvot, meaning the Avot lived in Hebron, but more than that, Ma'arat HaMachpelah, meaning Jewish history, right? Why are the Jews in Israel? We're not in Israel because of 1948. We're not in Yerushalayim because of 1967, right? We are in Israel because of going all the way back to Avram and Sarah, and Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Rachel and Leah, and then going straight through. That's why we're here. So where is Jewish history? Where's our historical connection to the land? Obviously, the answer is Hebron. That is Ma'arat HaMachpelah. That's where Yaakov said in Golus Mitzrayim, he says, go bury me in Ma'arat HaMachpelah. That's our homeland. That's our history. That's our Mesorah. So Hebron would have been a great choice. Not to mention that David already lived there. Would have been an amazing choice. Okay, anyone want to suggest a different choice? Anyone have any other ideas? There's no wrong ideas. So I'm just saying what someone might have thought, right? You don't have to get it right. You just have to say what someone might have thought. I know what I would have thought if I lived at that time, and it's not Hebron. Any other ideas? Let me give you a bit of a clue. If you read the Chumash, let's say I'm looking for the place Hashem wants me to build the Beis HaMikdash. So what do? I read the Chumash, I start from Bereshis Bar Elokim, go till Le'inei Kol Yisrael, and look for any relevant kind of perek. Is there any story perhaps we remember when we're young, when we learn basic Chumash stories, any story of any place in Israel where Hashem maybe revealed something and said something, or someone said something about being a house for Hashem, about it being a special place connected to Hashem and the Shemayim? Maybe what happened in Har Moriah? Akedas Yitzchak happened in Eretz HaMoriah. There's Akedas Yitzchak in Eretz HaMoriah, and then Avram says, Bahar Hashem Yera'eh, right? Har Hashem Yera'eh, and it says by the Beis HaMikdash, Yera'eh Kol Zechorcha. That's a good theory. Maybe something in Eretz HaMoriah, it doesn't even say Har Moriah, in Eretz HaMoriah, maybe someplace in Eretz HaMoriah. Are we sure exactly what counts as Eretz HaMoriah and where the Har is in Har Moriah? You know, we're not 100% sure. So maybe that would be included Yerushalayim, but it's not so posh because it's not called Yerushalayim, it's called the whole Eretz HaMoriah. I would have picked something else. Maybe Beersheva, because Beersheva is where Avram started everything, right? Okay. Maybe Beit El. I would have picked Beit El. Again, no right or wrong answers. We're talking about what someone might have thought. I'll tell you why I would have picked Beit El, and then I'll tell you who I think agreed with me. Okay, let's look. We're not going to read everything inside. Number 4, Parshas Vayetze. What happened in Parshas Vayetze? Yaakov falls asleep, and he has a dream of a ladder going up to Shemayim. What does that mean? This is the place you go up to Shemayim. And after the dream of the Malachim going up and down the ladder, Hashem appears to him. And what does Yaakov say when he wakes up? He says, Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh. Hashem is in this place. He says, Man nora ha'makom hazeh. How awesome is this place? Ein zeh ki im beis Elokim. This is the house of God. This is Shara Shemayim. It's the gate of heaven. Basically, Yaakov said, this Beit El is the house of Hashem. Not only that, what does he say? He says, when I come back, when I come back from Golus Lavan, this stone I've made into a pillar here, Yeh Beis Elokim, will be a house of God. Yaakov promises to build Hashem a house in Beit El. If I was alive at David's time, I might have said, you know where we should build the Beis HaMikdash? Build it in Beit El. Yaakov Avinu said Mefurash. He promised to build a Beis Elokim, a base for Hashem, a bayis for Hashem in Beit El. Right? If Yaakov says this is the place for the bayis of Hashem, maybe we should build the bayis of Hashem there. I personally would have picked Beit El. Can anyone think of who else in Tanakh maybe thought they should have picked Beit El? Anyone know any Tanakh stories? Anyone who thought maybe it should have been Beit El, not Yerushalayim? Right?
They built like this.
Who did?
One of the kings.
The first king from the wrong side?
Oh,
Malchut Beit David and made Malchut Yisrael, which was then the cause of a lot of, basically from then on, it really went downhill for most of the Sefer Malachim down to the Churban. What did he do? Number 5, Yerushalayim says, if everyone goes to Aliyah L'Regel to Yerushalayim, they'll restore their loyalty to Malchut Beit David. Says, rather, what am I going to do? I'll make 2 egels, and I'll say, don't go to Yerushalayim. Worship Hashem here, and make one in Beit El and one in Dan. I'm just thinking to myself, how did Yeravam ben Nevat convince people to worship where he built some egel in Beit El instead of where the Aron or the Luchot HaBrit and the Mikdash was in Yerushalayim? Maybe one of the things he said to people is, that David HaMelech guy and his son Shlomo, and more relevant, his grandson Rechavam, they don't know what they're talking about. They built something in Yerushalayim whose the word Yerushalayim doesn't even appear in Chumash. He said, guys, look at the Torah here. The Torah says Beit Elokim is in Beit El. You should come worship with me, not with these Davidic kings. Right? Yeravam picked up on this. He says, if I go with Beit El, then everyone will follow me, because that's what it says in the Chumash. I'm not getting into this now because it's a little radical, but if you want to think about things a little more radically, there's one Navi. Anyone know which one Navi is mostly fighting against the Mikdash in Beit El and telling people to go back to Yerushalayim? Anyone know which Navi mostly talks about that? The Navi Hosea. Right? Read it. Not so long, 14 Prakim or something. The Navi Hosea, and interestingly, the Navi Hosea is the only Navi who criticizes Yaakov Avinu. Okay, you wonder if perhaps, why would a Navi criticize Yaakov Avinu? Seems a little sacrilegious. Maybe he made a cheshbon that in his days, all these people were saying, you got to go with Beit El, because Yaakov Avinu decreed that that's where we build the Beis HaMikdash. And he felt it necessary in his time to say, you know what? Take your focus off Yaakov Avinu a little bit. Let's not focus on Yaakov Avinu, let's focus on other Nevi'im, because he didn't want people to draw conclusions based on what they found that Yaakov Avinu said. But nonetheless, it seems a good Hafamina. Basically, what has come out here? We have a bunch of suggestions. We're all living in the time of David HaMelech. We want to know where's the Makom Asher Yivchar Hashem. Okay, Yerushalayim's a suggestion, because it's Eretz HaMoriah, which is somewhat close. Hebron's a suggestion, Beersheva's a suggestion, Beit El's a good suggestion, and naturally I think so, Yerushalayim thought so. I mean, he was a Russia, but he was a smart Russia. So, how did David pick Yerushalayim? That's the mystery. All the Mefarshim wonder this, right? If David had picked Beit El, none of the Mefarshim would have commented. They would have said, well, yeah, we know I picked Beit El, because Yaakov said, yeah, Beis Elokim. Right? Even if he had picked maybe Hebron, they wouldn't have commented. They would have said, well, Maris HaMachpelah, the original Masorah of Jewish presence in Eretz Yisrael. But Yerushalayim really has just almost not been mentioned Tanakh until this point. A few side mentions in Yoshua, let's say. Where did he get Yerushalayim from? And here we have 2 different opinions. One opinion is, you can always say, he had a Masorah Torah Sheba'al Peh. Right? You never know if he had a Masorah Torah Sheba'al Peh. So maybe it's the easy answer. The easy answer might be, he had a Masorah Torah Sheba'al Peh. David had Torah Sheba'al Peh. So he knew that you should pick Yerushalayim. Says the Radak, number 6, V'chemin shamalach al kol Yisrael halach el Yerushalayim lilkod mitzudas Sion l'fi shayta Kabbalah etzlam ki Sion rosh mamlechet Yisrael. He went to conquer Mitzudas Sion Yerushalayim. Kabbalah in the language of the classic Mefarshim doesn't mean what we call Kabbalah. We call Kabbalah like a mystical tradition. That they called Sod. When they said Kabbalah, they meant what we call Masorah. Right? They meant they had a Masorah. Right? I mean, they had Kabbalah, they just didn't call it by the word Kabbalah. They called it by the word Sod. So, they had a Masorah, because Sion is the beginning of Jewish kingship. He had a Masorah, the Jewish king has to reign in Sion. Okay. If he had a Masorah, he had a Masorah. Why would he have a Masorah? Maybe based on what was suggested in that wing of the room. Rashi mentions number 7, Eretz HaMoriah is Yerushalayim. Maybe he had a Masorah Baal Peh that the Eretz HaMoriah that Avram did the Akedah on, and the Akedah was like the biggest korban ever, so maybe that's where we should make a Beis HaMikdash for korbanos, is Yerushalayim. Chem Devrei Yom, live in those Beis Hashem Yerushalayim, Har Moriah. In Yerushalayim it calls Yerushalayim, in Devrei Yom it calls Yerushalayim Har Moriah. So maybe they had a Masorah that Eretz HaMoriah was Yerushalayim. Number 8, flipping the page, the Rambam also thinks they had a Masorah, the Rambam and Radak. The Ein Safek Etzli. Gam Kein Sham Makom Asher Yichto Avram ben Nevuah. This place Avram specified in his Nevuah at the Akedah HaYaduah Tzal Moshe Rabbeinu Tzal Rambam was known to Moshe Rabbeinu and others. The Rambam in the Mordechai doesn't say he was known to David, but maybe David was part of the others, was part of the Rabbin, the many. She'avram Tzivo Som Shia Beis Avoda. Maybe David had this Masorah Baal Peh, like the Radak says, like the Rambam says. that there was a Masorah Baal Peh, that the Beis HaMikdash has to be in Yerushalayim, that the capital of the king's residence has to be in Yerushalayim. Maybe he had a Masorah Baal Peh. But it's not so pashut, because it doesn't say that he had a Masorah Baal Peh. This is just a theory made up by some Mefarshim. And the Chazon Ish, coming from a different angle of a sugya, is very convinced that they did not have a Masorah Baal Peh. Says the Chazon Ish number 9, Yerushalayim nitchalkal l'shvatim. Yerushalayim is divided up among the shvatim. Nira de l'kuli alma mitchila nitchalka. There's a machlokah whether Yerushalayim belongs to a shevet or not. Says the Chazon Ish, everyone agrees originally in the days of Yoshua, they gave Yerushalayim and they split it up and gave it to one shevet. Shari Adayim b'shat chalukah, when they split Eretz Yisrael and say for Yoshua, lo yadu makom shivchar Hashem. They didn't know where Hashem would pick. Says the Chazon Ish, there was no Masorah Baal Peh. Okay, he's against the Radak, he's against the Mordechai. He thinks he has proofs in the Gemara against them. He says that no, this is a theory of the Radak and the Mordechai, but he doesn't think it's pshat in the Gemara. He thinks that they had no Masorah Baal Peh. They didn't know where the Makom Sheichar Hashem would be. They had to figure it out. And, the question now is, let's assume Pshuto Shel Mikra, right? Pshuto Shel Mikra, we can't assume things that are not written in the Tanakh. I can't assume they had a Masorah Baal Peh. Maybe if it said so in Chazal, if it said in the Gemara or something. But one theory in the Mefarshim they had a Masorah Baal Peh, but the Chazon Ish says it's not a good theory, right? Maybe they had no Masorah Baal Peh. Maybe David had a logical reason for picking Yerushalayim. What could the logical reason have been? That's the mystery that we have 10 minutes left to solve. What could David's logical reason have been for picking Yerushalayim? And interesting, I guess knowing David HaMelech as well as we know, we'd even go so far, I think we can all assume that it would be a ruchnius reason, right? An avodas Hashem reason. A values-based reason for picking Yerushalayim. Why would David have picked Yerushalayim? Might have also been pragmatically helpful. Why would David have picked Dafka Yerushalayim? What's unique about Yerushalayim that would have made David pick it if he did not have a Masorah? Right? And even though he knew the Chumash, he knew the Akedah was in Eretz HaMoriah, it didn't say which city. It didn't say how big the Eretz HaMoriah is. Maybe it's a very big Eretz. Right? He knew lots of cities in Chumash. Yerushalayim wasn't one of them. So what made him pick Yerushalayim? So I think Pshuto Shel Mikra is the theory of the Malbim. But first, let's see where the Malbim gets it from. Right? The Malbim gets it from logic. Where does the Malbim get his theory from? Number 10. Let me ask you a simple question. What shevet was Yerushalayim part of? Right? The land was divided into 12 shvatim. Which shevet owned Yerushalayim? What? Yehuda. Yehuda owned Yerushalayim. Why? Look at number 10. The Yevusi Yerushalayim lo yochlu b'nei Yehuda lo risham. The Yevusi Yerushalayim, the b'nei Yehuda cannot drive them out, meaning it was given to them. They just couldn't conquer it till David's time. Vayeshev Yevusi es b'nei Yehuda Yerushalayim adiyam hazeh. Till, he doesn't mean this day, our day. He means until the day that Sefer Yoshua was written, right? Until the time of David HaMelech, the Yevusim lived next to b'nei Yehuda and Yerushalayim. Clearly, Yerushalayim was part of Shevet Yehuda. But is that so pashut? Look at Pasuk 11. V'tzela ha'elef v'hayivu, that's a city. V'hayivusi Yerushalayim. Givat Kiryat Arim Arba Esrei v'chatzreihen. Zos nachalas b'nei Binyamin l'mishpachosam. Yevusi Yerushalayim, right? V'hayivusi Yerushalayim is part of Nachalat b'nei Binyamin. Is it part of Yehuda or is it part of Binyamin? It's a bit of a steer in Sefer Yoshua. It's only 3 prakim apart. It says it's part of Yehuda, it says it's part of Binyamin. So what does the Gemara say? Everyone, all opinions of Chazal agree that the answer is, it was half and half. It was smack on the border, right? There are cities like that now. There's one city that's half in Israel, half in Syria. There's a city that's half in Texas, half in Mexico. These things happen. Sometimes a city could go over a borderline. Says the Gemara 12, the Tanya Mahar Bechelko Shel Yehuda Harbayis HaLishchot V'Azarot Maya Bechelko Shel Binyamin Ulam V'Heichel Beis Kodesh Yudashim. That even when they built the Beis HaMikdash, the borderline went through the Beis HaMikdash. What was in Yehuda's part? The Harabayit and the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash and the chambers. And what was in Binyamin's portion? The vestibule and the actual building of the Beis HaMikdash, including the Kodesh Kodashim. Like mamish on top of Harabayit, on top of the Kotel, the borderline went through. It was half Yehuda, half Binyamin. Okay, is that relevant in some sense? If we think about it, the only interesting thing Tanakh has told us about Yerushalayim is that it was half in Yehuda, half in Binyamin. And then all of a sudden, David picks it. Is that coincidence? Says the Malbim, maybe not. Says the Malbim, number 13. Acher sha'ate ta'achdu shnei mamlechot Yisrael shayu ad ata shevet Yehuda tachas David v'yetzer shvatim Binyamin shevet Shaul v'rosham tachat Ishboshes v'shavu kulu malchat achat tachat David hayim en ha'etza v'chino fi ritzon Hashem she'yom luch tiyeh b'gvul ha'shayich l'shnei ha'shvatim shayu shiftei malchus v'zeh yav Yerushalayim shayta chetzi l'Yehuda v'chetzi l'Binyamin k'mo shekasdo b'gvulei ha'aretz, etc. The Malbim says something wild. He says, again, let's put ourselves, again, it's not fair how we read Tanakh. We know the end of the story. We know David Melech Yisrael Chai B'Kayam, Mashiach ben David, etc., etc. Right? But they didn't know that at the time. David was a young whippersnapper. Right? What was going on at the time? At the time, you can imagine, the old king was Shaul, and his son Ishboshes took over, although not terribly successfully. And the new king was David HaMelech. David HaMelech represented Shevet Yehuda. And Ishboshes, the family of Shaul, represented Shevet Binyamin, and the other Shvatim who seem to have been with him. This goes back in history a long time, right? There's a lot of baggage here, all the way back to Rachel and Leah, right? A lot of baggage when a guy marries two wives. All the way back to Rachel and Leah. Binyamin represents Bnei Rachel, Yehuda represents Bnei Leah. They have been fighting about this baggage for 1,000 years. And most of 1,000 years. And now it comes down to two competing kings. You know what it's like when two people both think they're king? It gets very, very violent and very ugly very quickly. So, what does David HaMelech do? He had two choices. He could say, it's me, Yehuda, versus Binyamin. And I just won, because all the Shivtei Yisrael came and said, we give in to you, you win, you are our king. He has two choices. He could say, I double down, Yehuda wins. If Yehuda wins, where's the capital going to be? Hebron. Where am I going to build the Beis HaMikdash? In Hebron. And you know what? It'll make sense. I'll tell everyone, Mars HaMachpelah, Beis HaMikdash should be next to each other. It'll make sense to everyone. That's the place which Hashem will choose. That was one theory he could have taken. Or he could say, you know what? Now that they made me king of all of Eretz Yisrael, the most important thing for me to do is to show that I'm not only king over Shevet Yehuda, that Shevet Yehuda didn't win. The most important thing I could do is to show my team didn't win. We're all on Team USA, as it were. I remember Miracle. Old movie, okay. We're all on Team Am Yisrael. Team Am Yisrael won. If he said my capital's in Hebron, he's saying Team Yehuda won. Yehuda is the rulers of Am Yisrael, and Hebron is the capital of Yehuda. And that's it, we won. And he could have gotten away with that. But he surprisingly decided not to. Why? Because he's David HaMelech. Because he's David HaMelech Yisrael Chai B'Kayam. Because he's not a regular politician like politicians nowadays. He is someone who saw eternity. And he says, the point of Am Yisrael is not that my Shevet wins and your Shevet loses. The point of Am Yisrael is that we all win when we're together and we all lose when we're competing with each other. So what am I going to do? Where am I going to bring my capital city? I'll find one place in Israel that's the borderline between Yehuda, my Shevet, and Binyamin, Shaul's Shevet. I'll find the one place that's neutral territory between me and my biggest competitors and my biggest enemies. And I'll make my capital there to show that I don't favor any side over any other side. I represent Klal Yisrael and not part of Klal Yisrael. David HaMelech's big move, says the Malbim, was, now that I'm king, I have a decision that determines the destiny of my Malchus, my descendants, until Mashiach comes. Am I king of Yehuda and Yehuda's king of Am Yisrael? Or am I king of Am Yisrael and everyone equally without showing any favoritism towards my people? And he made the right decision. He said, I'm the king of Am Yisrael. I'm not the king of my people. I'm the king of everyone. And you know what? We don't have time to go into this now, but I'll tell you something that's going to be a little jarring, but you're old enough to handle it. When you make the right decision, you always win in eternity, but you don't always win in the short run. Sometimes it's hard to make the right decision. Sometimes it's difficult and you suffer for making the right decision in the short run. Anyone know what's the worst thing that ever happened to David HaMelech after he was king? What? Worse? Avshalom. The merit Avshalom's rebellion against him. Where did Avshalom start his rebellion against David? In It's Makar 15 in Hebron. We're not going to read the rest of the code inside. In Hebron. You wonder why all of Hebron rebelled against David. You know, I wonder about this. Imagine some politician gets elected to the Knesset with 61 Chavei Knesset. He can make his own government. And what does he say? He says, we could rule, my party could rule the whole country, but no, I'm going to include everyone in the government because I'm equally for all of Am Yisrael. In eternity, that's the right move. Tomorrow, everyone else in his party who thought they were getting all the power is going to try to stab him in the back and get rid of him because they're very resentful. You can imagine how upset the people in Hebron were. We win. They weren't all the Madrig of David Melech. They were like normal politicians. We won, and David gave up our power, our exclusivity. David gave up our prominence and wanted to go with all of Klal Yisrael. It's no wonder that they rebelled against him the first time they had an opportunity and said, let's appoint another king who's going to show everyone who's boss and that we're better than all the other kinds of Jews. Right? It's not always easy to make the right decision. But again, in eternity, David was right. Why did Hashem, what is the Malbim going to claim here? Why did Hashem pick Makam Asher Yivchar Hashem? Why did he pick Yerushalayim? Because ultimately what Hashem picks is not the place with the most history. And it's not the place with the most nevuah. Hashem picks the place that unifies Klal Yisrael. Hashem picks the place that represents all of Klal Yisrael being in it together. Because after all, Makar 1, what was it all about? It was about not everyone doing their own thing, but coming together to have one Beis HaMikdash. The whole point of the Beis HaMikdash is not that we can't bring karbanos in our backyard. It used to be mutter to bring karbanos in your backyard. That Hashem doesn't want us to bring karbanos in my backyard, because then my backyard I invite my friends to my karbanos, and we think our shtibel is better than your shtibel, and our shul is better than your shul. Hashem wants us to all bring karbanos to Beis HaMikdash, so we'll be one place. As a matter of fact, the Rambam says, Makar 18, based on the Psukim number 17, that, again, I don't mean to be depressing, but sometimes it's really hard for me when I look around and I see from Jews nowadays. When I see the non-from Jews, it's also depressing because they're far from the Torah. We can recover them. You see the from Jews, they always argue about everything. I think you should do the halacha this way. You think you should do it this way. I think we should follow this shita. You think that shita. You ask, why can't they all just get along? Like, you ask, after all, if Hashem gave the Torah, why didn't he just make some sort of mechanism that we could resolve all these things and have achdos and not have to argue all the time about what the halacha is? And the answer is, the Rambam points out, Psukim point out, Hashem did. He said, beginning Parsha Shoftim, whenever you have a machlokas in halacha, you go up to the Beis HaMikdash and ask the Sanhedrin Gedola, the Sanhedrin in the Beis HaMikdash, and whenever they paskin, everyone follows. Of course we're supposed to have unity. Of course we're not supposed to fight all the time about how to keep the Torah and what the halacha is and what the hashkafa is. Of course we're supposed to be one people. What makes us that one people? The Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash gives us one place to bring karbanos, even when we don't bring karbanos to now. The Beis HaMikdash gives us one place. Let's say you have a Jew in Japan, and a Jew in South Africa, and a Jew in Las Vegas, and a Jew in Oslo, and they're all davening. Are they all davening together or separately? They're all davening together. You know why? Again, you can read this, take it home. Number 20. They're all davening together because they're all davening to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is the place that our ancestors all brought their karbanos to one place, and we all daven to the same place. The Gemara says when I'm in Oslo, Norway, and I'm davening Shmona Esrei, I'm supposed to feel like I'm davening Shmona Esrei together with the Jews in Tel Aviv, and together with the Jews in Efrat, and together with the Jews in New York, and together with the Jews in London, together with the Jews in Cape Town, because we're all davening together. We're putting our tefillos together in the Beis HaMikdash. The reason Hashem wants a Beis HaMikdash is not that he needs a house. The reason that Hashem wants a Beis HaMikdash is that we can have some place we can all focus on and be one place. Right? Like the Kotel. I have to admit, I'm not as good a Jew as I would want to be. I would love to be able to get up here and say that when I go to Minyan 3 times a day. Okay, that part of a good Jew I do. But I would love to say that I equally daven in my Minyan 3 times a day with Sephardim, with Ashkenazim, with Hasidim, with Misnagdim, with Haredim, with Ati Leumi, with all colors yarmulkes and hats and all accents and all skin tones. I would love to say that when I go to Minyan, I daven equally with all kinds of Jews. But it's not true. When I go to Minyan, I go to my local place where all the people moved in because they have the same hashkafa and they're coming from the same place, same socioeconomic class, and same level of religiosity, and same hashkafa. And that's who I daven with because we're all in our comfort zone. The one time in my life that I ever daven with people who are not normally in my comfort zone is when I go to the Kotel. Then you'll have a Minyan, and I'll be with this kind of, I don't even know how to identify. There are people who know about the color of the socks and that wear the payas are, whether it's a ger chassid or a bels chassid, etc. I know there's all kinds of chassidim and all kinds of everything, and the soldiers and everyone. Like we're on the same minyan at the kotel. Why? Because there's only one kotel, and we have to figure out how to share it, right? And somehow it all works. Somehow we manage to daven because we have the same Shemona Esrei and the same Hashem and the same Torah, and we manage to make it work. That's what Beis HaMikdash is all about. That's what Yerushalayim is about. Yerushalayim is about a place David HaMelech knew. It's a place where a Jew who can think his kind of Jew is better than another kind of Jew makes a different decision. It says all kinds of Jews are equal to me. I want to be equally connected to all Jews, even if I have the power to do otherwise. That's David HaMelech, and that's what Hashem picked, because that's what it was all about. Not Ish Kol Yashar Be'inav, not everyone does their own thing, but they were all in this together, we're all one Am Yisrael. Okay, there are many, many more Makoros on the sheet, not in the sheet, that support this idea, but I think really if you go through fascinatingly, Pshuta Shel Mikra Pasha Pshat in Tanakh, and the Malbim pointed it out for us, is that Hashem didn't pick Yerushalayim because of the Akedah. Obviously Hashem knew, he arranged history, his divine plan, that would all fit in, all the puzzle pieces would fit together. You know, but the proximate cause of Hashem's picking Yerushalayim was not the Akedah, was not the fact that when he created the world in Parshas Bereshis, he created Adam Arishon from the Makam HaMizbeach on top of the Kotel. It wasn't because of the middle of the world. Hashem picked Yerushalayim because David HaMelech picked Yerushalayim for the right reasons. For the reasons of Achdus, of all Jews being equal, of us being together as all Jews. And I think that on Yom Yerushalayim, it's what I would like to convince everyone, is that in addition to obviously Pshuto Shel Chag, it's a day to give Shevach Vodah to Hashem. Hopefully we'll have some inspiring speakers that tell us how much Shevach Vodah we owe to Hashem for what happened in 1967 on Chafkat B'Iyar, because we might have no idea how much Shevach Vodah we owe. We might think, oh, now we got Yerushalayim, and not realize all the other Shevach Vodah. It's a day of Shevach Vodah. It's also a day to rededicate ourselves to caring about Yerushalayim, to really feeling like wherever we go, our heart is in Yerushalayim. But I think also it's a day to think about what Yerushalayim really means. It's a day to think about how do I go out of my comfort zone? How do I, starting just in my head and in my heart, stop thinking how everyone naturally thinks that here's my people and then the rest of the Jews are a little scary and a little distant from me. Really feel the actors of all kinds of Jews really recognize that if I step out of my comfort zone and try to connect to all kinds of Jews, they are eager for that connection. And inside we're all one. We're just waiting for the first few brave people to take that step and build those bridges and connect. And Amir Tashem, I am fairly confident that the more that we can follow David HaMelech, the more that we can realize the inner meaning of Yerushalayim, of unity, of all of us being together, not my kind of Jew, but the Jewish people, that we're all Hashem's kind of Jew, then the closer we'll get to what we really want in Yom Yerushalayim, which is not just dancing to the Kotel, but dancing up to, on top of the Kotel, seeing the Beis HaMikdash, the Makom Asher Yivkar Hashem, like it's supposed to be. B'mheira v'yameinu, Amen.
Thank you very much for Bednarsh.